Anyone who's taken even a few taxi rides in Germany is sure to have ridden in an E-Class Mercedes. As the taxi driver's favorite model, a good many of the more than 13 million E-Classes that Mercedes has sold to date have served as cabs. They have a reputation as being highly robust. Some are even said to have clocked up 700,000 kilometers or more. Change of scenery, the coast of Portugal, where the weather is noticeably warmer and where Mercedes is presenting its new generation E-Class. Car tester Sascha Knapp realizes that many viewers will be reminded of a taxi, and in this model, the driver quickly starts feeling more like a passenger. But the question is, would the driver really want that? Mercedes' W213 series, the latest generation, is a completely new model, not just a facelift. At 4 meters 92, it's even a bit longer than its predecessor. It was launched on the European market with 3 engine options, a 135 kilowatt gasoline-powered and 2 diesel engines. We tested the smaller diesel, the E220D model, with 143 kilowatts of power. It takes 7.3 seconds to hit 100 kilometers per hour from zero, with fuel consumption rated at 4.3 liters per 100 kilometers. The lower RPMs make for less noise and the dual acoustic glass for even less, at extra cost, of course. Also new is the Drive Pilot Assisted Driving System. It doesn't drive the car, but supports the still active driver. Sascha is going to try out the car's semi-autonomous driving system. It's available up to 210 kilometers per hour on the highway, but it's supposed to work for city driving as well. 210 kilometers per hour isn't allowed in Portugal, so he'll start off a bit more leisurely. He pulls this lever on the steering column twice to switch the system on. He can take both feet off the pedals and even let go of the wheel, and it actually stays in the lane on its own. The driver should keep both hands on the wheel. After all, he's in control, not Mercedes. The driver can set the distance to other cars on the road with the same lever. The Drive Pilot uses sensors and cameras to detect road markings and other cars. So even in stop-and-go traffic in town, the Mercedes can pace the car in front as if on an invisible tow line. The system can recognize and keep the lane without markings up to 130 kilometers per hour. Sascha explains that the new Drive Pilot also supports automatic lane changing. This means the driver has the option of changing lanes simply by activating the turn signal lever. All you have to do is hold it for 2 seconds in the direction you want to go, and the car itself carries out the maneuver. The driver may not have even seen the overtaking car, but the Drive Pilot will have already had a fix on it and breaks off its own passing maneuver. And the driver can try again right away by holding the lever for 2 seconds. Another function made possible by the interaction between the traffic sign assist cameras and the Drive Pilot is the Speed Limit Pilot, an idea originally introduced by Ford. The system automatically reads speed limits and reduces the speed if necessary. Sascha quips that one thing this Mercedes probably won't do is pay any speeding tickets the driver might get. If the driver stops reacting at all, the car will sound an alert, quickly bring itself to a stop, and turn the flashers on. But it won't leave the lane by itself because it has no way of knowing what the surface there is like. And if the car started swerving, it could be a real problem. Sascha points out that the Drive Pilot does not come cheap. It runs about 2,800 euros on top of the price of an E-Class. It would take a lot of taxi driving to cover the added cost. In the cabin, a screen resembling an outsized iPhone takes up almost the entire instrument panel. Sasha explains that Mercedes is now moving away from a dash-mounted display to an integrated two-component display, one for the instruments and one for navigation. Both are on a 12.3-inch screen, and it's very tempting to try to adjust something. But that only leaves grease spots. The actual switches are built into the steering wheel, plus a touchpad and a dial. But there are so many shiny surfaces on the console that you need a rag handy to wipe the dust and fingerprints away. After a while, that gets to be something of a pain. The bad news is that neither the sat-nav nor the digital displays are standard. The base version comes with the conventional round instruments. It feels like having a tube TV set instead of a flat screen. Daimler's reasoning is that it has to offer a stripped-down base version for the taxi drivers. Sasha observes that no matter who drives this E-Class, there are occasions when you need to take more than one passenger, and then you need space in the back, especially if it's a taxi. But unlike what Sasha was expecting, the back seat doesn't have that much room. The 10th generation may have added 7 centimeters to its wheelbase, but they don't seem to have gone into more legroom. His knees are pressed against the front seats, and the headroom is less than adequate. Sasha sums up saying the new E-Class's active steering takes some getting used to at high speeds. The driver has to build a level of trust in the car. For him personally, the starting price is a bit too steep, especially since it includes none of the high-tech gadgetry. He's hoping the Drive Pilot will eventually find its way into other Mercedes models. Then he might find one right for him. 6 decades after its market debut, VW's van is still hugely popular. By the late 1960s, it had acquired cult status, symbolizing freedom and adventure. By 1967, 1.8 million first-generation VW buses had been produced in Germany. Our tester says that many VW buses have fared a similar fate to this one, or are in even worse shape, covered by rust. Incidentally, the first VW buses were built in Wolfsburg, before production was moved to Hanover in 1956. Today, our car tester Matas Kurat will have a look at how VW vans are manufactured. This Hanover factory has been turning out VW vans for 60 years. Now it's producing the 6th generation of the van. In Hanover, like everywhere else, the production process starts with sheet metal, 0.7 or 0.9 or 1 millimeter thick. These sheets are then placed in a press and shaped into a variety of forms. This here, for example, is the hood of a VW T6. The press can make the upper, lower, and internal parts. It's a dual-purpose machine. Nothing new, really. This kind of machine has been around since the early days of car making. But this PXL press is much more efficient and quieter than the old ones. At 95 meters length and 23 meters width, this PXL 200 press line is one of Europe's largest. It exerts a pressure of 9,100 tons, making it stronger yet and more energy efficient than previous models. Up to 60 different car parts can be molded with this machine. VW has also upgraded its assembly line. Monta says that the factory he's standing in is quite old, but that the assembly lines to the left and behind him were only installed 2 years ago, while production was ongoing. Quite a feat. The workers also benefit from this progress. Harald Baumann of VW Commercial Vehicles says many improvements have been made. There is now an electric monorail system that can be adjusted in height depending on the model in production. There are also conveyor belts that carry workers along so they don't have to walk. Montes says there's an abundance of machines and robots involved in manufacturing VW's commercial vehicles, just as with every other car. But humans can never be replaced entirely. They're essential when it comes to assembly. VW Commercial Vehicles Works Council Chairman Thomas Zwiebler isn't worried that this increasing automation will mean layoffs for the 14,000 employees at the Hanover production site. Thomas Zwiebler says that as industrial production processes become more complex, human labor is required more and more often. The VW bus remains a cult car. Now the van is in its 6th generation and in high demand. After production is done, there is a check to see if everything works. It takes about 4 days to build a van. Every 2.5 minutes, a new vehicle rolls off the assembly line. To date, some 12 million VW vans have been made, a success story that the 6th generation VW bus is set to continue. Audi has presented the most powerful SUV on the market, the SQ7 TDI. The newly developed 4-liter V8 turbocharged diesel engine puts out 320 kilowatts of power and 900 newton-meters of torque. A world first in the SQ7 TDI is an electronic compressor. Especially at lower engine speeds, it complements the 2 turbochargers and enhances performance during acceleration. It'll be ready to order in Europe starting in spring 2016, with a starting price of €89,900 in Germany. Hyundai has added one more engine to the range for its best-selling Tucson, a new entry-level 1.7-liter diesel, already familiar from the Hyundai i40, with 340 newton-meters of torque. The 104-kilowatt engine comes with a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission as standard for all the equipment lines. The Tucson can be ordered with the new engine starting in March. Prices start at €27,450 in Germany. For over a quarter century, Mazda's been working to perfect the roadster experience. The 4th generation Mazda MX-5 comes closer to that ideal than ever, the ideal of the driver becoming one with the car. The engineers have been tweaking and adjusting countless fine points, the body's proportions, for example, or the weight and center of gravity. Car tester Dean Malai has no doubt, even if it doesn't look like one, the MX-5 is a classic. Mazda introduced it in 1989 and has sold at least 1 million since then. That makes it the world's best-selling roadster. That in itself could easily qualify it as a legend, at least among MX fans. And Dean is thinking about becoming one. The new generation of the 2-seater soft-top convertible appeared on the market last autumn. We tested the Mazda MX-5 with the smaller of the 2 gasoline engines, putting out 96 kilowatts, or 131 horsepower. It can make 100 kilometers per hour from 0 in 8.3 seconds, with a maximum speed of 204 kilometers per hour. Dean thinks it sounds almost like he's test driving a revival of the Isetta microcar. The specs may not be jaw-dropping, but he's having lots of fun driving this little raceabout. That has to do with the curb weight of barely 1,000 kilos. Even with just 131 horsepower, the engine makes the driver feel that it's just the right one for the car. The new MX-5 has a lower center of gravity as well. That affects the driving dynamics of this purest little sports car. The 6-speed manual transmission with its tight gearing adds to the sport car feel. Dean factors in the seat position. Sitting down low makes him feel as if the car had been welded right around his body. The tight steering harmonizes splendidly with the transversely mounted mid-engine, which delivers power to the rear axle in up to 7,000 RPMs. The suspension is just stiff enough to be sporty, and it's adjusted to give the rear axle the right amount of travel. Dean could drift all the way around the curves, but he doesn't.
Na klar, hier voll durch die Kurven driften mache ich natürlich nicht, mein Führerschein brauche ich noch.
The MX-5's new design gives it a more emotional look, especially in front. The cockpit is set back a bit farther, but Mazda thought better of departing too much from the classical lines. Surfaces inside the doors, painted with the body's outside colors, give the car a down-to-business look. The interior design is reduced to essentials, but still comes across as elegantly sporty. The design concept is applied just as rigorously to the soft top, Dean observes. Nothing about it is electric. It's all manual. It can easily be put up or down without stopping, just as you might expect from such a puristic automobile. Even if it's child's play stowing the top or putting it back up, it may be a better idea to pull over for the procedure, in the interest of safety. Dispensing with expensive electronic gadgetry affects the price tag noticeably. The car we tested runs nearly 23,900 euros in Germany, an important factor in this success story. Dean thanks Mazda for keeping the MX-5 as a minimalist, puristic roadster, and unlike so many other cars, an affordable one as well. He also gives the makers credit for not taking a perfectly good car and developing it to death, like VW did with the Beetle and BMW did with the Mini. And he doesn't want to talk about what's become of his beloved Mustang, so he salutes the Mazda MX-5 as a modern classic with the stuff to become a legend.
Ein moderner Klassiker mit dem Potenzial zur Legende.
In the early 1960s, Europe was experiencing a baby boom. Renault boss Pierre Dreyfus responded with the development of a radically new interior design for a mid-size car. Car tester Christoph Bauer recalls what Dreyfus announced to his team. We've got to see things in a new light. A car cannot always consist of 4 seats, a hood, and a trunk. We've got to see it as a single space. The result was the 1961 Renault R4, a revolutionary and innovative compact car. And in 1965, Renault launched the R16, a mid-size family car with a hatchback, large trunk lid, and flexible interior.
Revolutioniert der R16 die Welt der Familienkutsche.
During the design process, the engineers had almost total freedom. The only requirement was a front-wheel drive. In just 4 years, the newly established Bureau de Style progressed from a prototype to a production model R16 and built a new production facility at Sandouville, near Le Havre. Christoph says when the R16 was launched, the media was impressed. They praised the car as a benchmark and symbol of practicality and held it up as a challenge to German engineering. Race driver Sterling Moss praised the vehicle as the most intelligently engineered car he had ever encountered. The R16 was named Car of the Year in 1966. Even today, the car is still a smooth and comfortable ride. Granted, the steering is a bit squishy, and going around curves can be nerve-wracking, but overall this is a great set of wheels. Even German customs agents were captivated.
Schweißtropfen auf die Stirn, aber im Großen und Ganzen ein wunderbares Reisegefährt. Und auch die deutschen Grenzbeamten, die waren damals von den inneren Werten äußerst angetan.
Guten Tag, deutsche Zollkontrolle bitte. 1, 2, 11 Stück, das ist prima.
Ein fantastischer Wagen. Schau mal die Form.
And so the Renault R16 became an international hit. Initially, sales figures doubled year by year. By 1972, 7 years later, Renault had sold over 1 million R16s. Renault kept producing the car until 1980, continually developing new versions, including a luxury TX model with over 90 horsepower, electric windows, and a 5-speed manual transmission.
C'est quoi votre voiture?
C'est une Renault 16 TS.
Also, wenn man sich diese markante...
Christoph says the R16 has a unique design. The two-box design is a particular feature. It broke with the conventional design at the time, where vehicles were divided into 3 boxes: the engine in front, the passenger compartment, and the trunk and back. In contrast, the R16 fused the passenger and trunk space, allowing for a flexible interior with up to 7 different variations.
7 Variationsmöglichkeiten sind da drin.
There's the so-called normal position for when you're just driving, and the transport exceptionnel position for transporting large items. The back seat can be folded away entirely. Then there's the position relais to relax, as well as the couché position for sleeping and cuddling. Back then, the Renault 16 had one of the most spacious and comfortable interiors of any midsize car. Neat features like the continuous ventilation grille and a classy ashtray express a typically French charm. Another clever feature, metal rails along the flared pagoda roof. They provide stability and function as roll bars. Oddly, the torsion bar suspensions were installed one behind the other, making the wheelbase 6 centimeters longer on the left side than on the right.
Außergewöhnlich auch,
Car tester Christoph thinks it's unusual that the engine compartment has to be opened with the ignition key.
da befindet sich
And there we find a spare tire, as well as a redesigned 1.5-liter 4-cylinder engine with 55 horsepower.
55 PS. Und der ganze Motor
The engine block, cylinder head, and gears are made from a lightweight aluminum alloy. To achieve better balance, the gears are located ahead of the front axle, while the engine sits behind, more typical of modern sports cars. So the Renault was actually ahead of its time.
Man war seiner Zeit ein bisschen voraus, ja.
And this raspy yet melodic sound is quite enchanting. The large engine capacity ensures that the Renault R16 musters a maximum of 93 horsepower, while the sturdy powertrain of the R17 Gordini and the sporty Alpine A110 deliver even more thrust.
Der R16, ein
Christoph feels the R16 stands for the famous French lifestyle, a bit eccentric but very likable and easygoing. Road bumps? Pas de problème. The R18 suspension smooths right over them. Too lazy to change gears? You can go 40 kilometers per hour or faster in just 3rd or 4th gear. And the seats are as soft as a sofa. Absolument confortable. Overall, a pretty relaxing ride.
Absolument komfortabel. Also Stress kommt hier wahrlich nicht auf.
The R16 really lives up to Renault's old Cars for Life slogan. It can be accustomed according to every owner's special wishes. Until this day, Renault has a reputation for building great family cars. It laid the groundwork for this with the 1965 R16.
Der Renault 16 ist das
Christoph reckons Renault built the right car at the right time. It was produced for 15 years, from the mid-1960s until 1980, an impressive record. As the first mid-size sedan hatchback with a large trunk lid and flexible interior, it set the standard for mid-size sedans. As such, the R16 is a milestone in automotive engineering.
der Automobilgeschichte.
Overall, 1.8 million R16s were built, but very few models are still in good condition today. Owners took Renault's slogan quite literally and drove their cars hard. As a result, many gradually wore out over time.